right. Thank you, Meredith. So George and Dawn, want to start off, want to brag about you a little bit, and then we'll turn that into a question or two. Is that okay? So first
I
of all,
only usually get that from my mom, so that'd be awesome.
So George, first of all, so you have a long career as a business executive, leader in sports and media, New York Times, WWE. And then Dawn, you have a long and very successful career in iBanking, doing some of the biggest deals in sports and media. So first question is, why now? Why do you then go in and start a PE fund over the past couple of years? And then secondly, how do you use your prior experience as a competitive advantage going forward?
Yeah, so on the why now, look, it's been interesting over the last 10 years as we've seen the media and entertainment ecosystem globally change dramatically. And we're reaching a tipping point, right? Things that you were talking about 10 or 12 years ago happening, the power of content, over time, taking kind of more of the value chain economics relative to distribution was happening continually. It's been happening for about 10 years, and I think we're reaching a tipping point. So generally, my partner and I, Michelle Wilson, who's in the audience, have a strong belief in the long-term value of content in this changing world globally. Within that, we just think sports, because it's got some unique attributes, this multi-generational fan base. Obviously, we saw that at WWE. The fact that sports are global, the fact that 2.5 billion people around the world are going to join the global internet community over the next 5 years, the fact that women's sports are reaching a tipping point for a lot of reasons. We just think this is a unique moment in time. And I think investors who come in and investors who know how to create value are going to do especially well. For us specifically, we're an operator-led investment firm. So we've got an amazing investment team, but Michelle and I have long careers of creating economic value operationally within businesses. We did it at WWE, where we 7x the market cap. Obviously, one of the biggest sports transactions just occurred with Michelle and I on the board. We did it with Bolero when we took them public. So we know how to do it. We've got a playbook, and we think that playbook is applicable to a lot of teams and leagues.
Thanks. And George, I think George and I have known each other for what?
15 years.
15 years or so?
That's right.
Good to be up here, and we were in very different seats when we were hanging out. I think it was doing a digital
it's a long time
channel or something. Anyway, good to be here, but I guess that means we're old. So look, I'll take a little bit of a different tack. I agree with everything that George said in terms of why now. For me personally, I'd spent 25, 30 years in the business of sport, had seen evolution of capital formation. Personally, I'd gotten myself into a place in my career where it was time for me to take a little bit of a risk, and I felt like I wanted to play in this evolution of capital, and I was doing it as an advisor. I saw there was going to be an opportunity, and I found the right partner, Jonathan Nelson from Providence, and we decided that the time was now, and we wanted to be there early so that we could have some handprints and fingerprints on where capital was moving and how it was going to be formed. And I think we're, in the early days of private equity in sport, and I felt like just given relationships and experience in the ecosystem, we could have a real legacy around how this thing happens.
Yeah, and I think Don's point there is sometimes kind of misunderstood, is that this is an emerging asset class. Yeah. Right? We talk a lot about it in the moment, but really the news has really been over the last couple of years. While private equity investment's been happening outside the U.S. for a long time, the fact that the leagues, which are the biggest sports franchises, the U.S. leagues, are now opening up to private equity, it has opened up the eyes of investors, right? Even though they may not have been aware that you could invest in sports overseas, but now it's opening up the eyes. So to Don's point, it's really an early emerging asset class. When you read the news, you get the sense that, oh my God, it's so crowded. It really isn't. There's probably, between teams, leagues, the adjacencies around sports, $600–700 billion worth of investable assets. And the AUM right now around sports, especially specifically focused on sports, is 10, maybe 20. So it is very, very early days.
Absolutely. Now, Don, you were very nice. I know a lot of thought went into this to plan your Liverpool investment around the Sportico conference. So Scott's very appreciative that you did that right before. But what can you?
I was very jealous.
What can you tell us about the Liverpool investment? What went into it? Why you did it? And where things are going to go from here?
Yeah, so first, I think I sold one ticket for Scott. I think yesterday, I'm pretty confident I did. So
Good job.
kudos to me. There you go.
Is Scott even here?
He's not even here. So look, when we started Dynasty, we wanted the firm to be viewed as global. And so early on, as we were looking through potential first deals, it was important to us that it was something that would sort of put our brand on the map. But most importantly, we wanted to make sure it was a good deal. And what does a good deal mean? World-class asset, world-class management team and ownership, but importantly, one for us where we had deep relationships and a lot of trust, right? We are taking a minority stake. And so we're putting a lot of trust in the folks that are shepherds of that capital. And they're, with Liverpool, my partner has known the squad there for over 40 years. I've known people there for over 20 years. And vice versa. So there was a lot of trust. And over the course of the summer, as we were putting the deal together, you could feel that trust. And for us, with a first investment, we didn't want to be in a situation where we deployed capital and then had to hope that nothing was going to go wrong. Here, we had a lot of confidence that things were going to go in the right direction.
Perfect. Now, George, you have a co-founder, a friend of yours who's a superstar, former NBA player, in Carmelo Anthony.
I thought you were talking about Michelle until you said former NBA player. I was like, really? I didn't know that.
What can you talk about what Carmelo brings to the table from an athlete investor standpoint?
Yes, so good question. So I'll start take a step back. When Michelle and I founded the firm with the idea of investing and advising in the content ecosystem with sports as a focus, I'll be honest, there wasn't a unique perspective of kind of bringing in a celebrity or an athlete into the firm. However, the unique element here is, as Michelle and I were running WWE, one of the board members, Stuart Goldfarb, had been investing with Carmelo together in their venture fund for 10, 12 years. So Michelle and I, 1 degree of separation for Carmelo for a long time. And when we talked to Stuart about what we were doing, he said, boy, Carmelo and I have been thinking about this as well. How about we shut down our firm, Mello 7, and we find a way to work together. And so that 1 degree of separation kind of went to 0 degrees as we got to know Carmelo. And there were 3 things for us: the humility, the intellectual curiosity, and the philanthropic bent, which is a big part of our firm as well. I mean, Michelle and I said when we started ISOS, we're going to take a percentage of the profits of the company as well as the carry, and donate it to underrepresented community. By the way, I saw what you did at the Coyotes. I know you were a leader in bringing philanthropy there, which is awesome, and kudos to you. We're big believers in that as well, and so is Carmelo. So in any event, what you find with Carmelo, obviously one of the greatest NBA players ever, terrific. It's the respect he has in the sports community. He's a longtime member of the Players Executive Council. So within the NBA, within team ownership and outside leagues, you see there's a real respect for the integrity he has. And so frankly, when you get to then, all right, do you want to partner with someone and how is it going to be additive? We just think his, all the elements I mentioned, the intellectual curiosity, the humility, the philanthropy, but also that reputation, which is so important. We just said, boy, this is really additive to the team, and we just liked them. And so that's how we ended up together. And it's been a great decision.
Sure.
Michelle, true? All right.
Stuff.
And she is a pretty good basketball player.
And Don, through FSG, you're partnered with LeBron, and certain other star athletes have taken a significant role in funds. Aaron Rodgers with RX3. For both of you, where do you see this? Is this a trend that's going to continue? Are there going to be more athlete investors? Where does this go from here?
I mean, look, I think it's such a wonderful asset class that I think all should want to be involved. And athletes who live and breathe it, and especially those that played on the highest of high levels, can feel the passion. And they understand what it means for a little kid to go to their first ball game and what that means from just a customer acquisition perspective, lifetime value of that fan. And so if you're a player, why would you not want to be involved. And so I think it's great to see some of the things that are happening where more and more players are able to find their way into equity. And I think that's true with, families, with institutions and endowments and the like. It's a good time now, as I said earlier, for capital formation to evolve, and players are a big part of that.
Sure. Now both of you have messaged diversity as a differentiator for your firms. First off, can you talk a little bit more about that? And then second, how would you grade right now the PE world in terms of its diversity? Probably pretty poorly, I'm guessing, from the smile.
Yeah, I don't think there's a grade that low. So, when Michelle and I founded the firm, one of the things, that we've believed for a long time, it's actually one of the things that kind of, when we met 15 years ago, brought us together among a lot of things, is this view that there's a strong business case for diversity in the decision making, whatever business you're in, because everybody can read about different people and how they view the world. It's something when you felt somewhat like an outsider, and it's not a little violin playing, it's just that's your life experience. You tend to see the world a little bit differently, and those differences among people, it's a little bit more visceral. And it just doesn't go for race and gender. It also goes for when you're doing business in India or you're doing business in the Middle East. The fact that you've been different, I think it opens up your eyes a little bit. So it's not the end all and be all, but it's a tool in the toolkit. So, we believe there's a strong business case. And then when you ask the question, you say, look, in the United States, however you define, minority or not, but gender-wise, it's 50-50. Minority, non-minority, it's 60-40. That's the population. If you looked at sports viewership, the people where the economics are coming from, it's the same thing, 50-50, 60-40. To your question on the PE, it's 1% or 1.5% of AUM is controlled by women and about 3% by minorities. So we think it's a competitive advantage, right? Diversity. Separate apart from that, and I'll speak for myself, I've got a little chip on my shoulder, right? So the idea of moving that needle, that 1% and 4%, appeals to me on a personal level, right? I want to make a difference, right? I want to do something. The reason we give back to communities is because we want to say, hey, look, there's a way, so there's money, you give back money and you say, hey, there's a way that you too can play wherever you want to play, but for people to see the experience and say, hey, that Latino kid did it. Yeah, he came out of the inner city, he did it. That woman did it, who didn't grow up in great means. Carmelo Anthony, African-American and Latino, he did it. He came out and now he's an investor. That's as powerful as the money. So there's an emotional element too. So for us, that's why it's important.
I love that.
Yeah, I don't even want to try and add on to that because George said it so well. I'll just go a little bit of a different direction with it. Look, sports teams are the ultimate consumer brands, and if you're going to be victorious, you need to have a voice with all communities. And what I've observed over the years, especially as these teams have gotten more and more wealthy, and larger in revenues, that there are certain parts of the communities that are being ignored. And in a city like New York, where you have multiple teams in the same league, there's a competition, and I can see it. I feel it every day. I'm weird. I have season tickets to the Knicks and the Nets, and I can tell which team is doing a better job throughout the 5 boroughs. And you don't do that by just having expensive tickets that you're selling to people in Tribeca and the West Village. You need to make sure that the people in the boroughs who don't necessarily have the means to go to the arena are engaging with your content. This coming Saturday, the Brooklyn Nets are having a free practice in Brooklyn Bridge Park. I've gone every single year with my family, and you see all the types of folks that go there who don't necessarily have the means to engage. That's a great thing. And so as I think about diversity and what it is that we want to do as a firm, is help teams think this through. And I'm not suggesting that I'm some social worker, community activist, community builder. I'm a Wall Street guy. However, I have Kwame Owesekese, who's the CEO of Harlem Children's Zone, on my senior advisory board. I have Dick Parsons, who has done everything on my advisory board. And I know that once we're in with a team and there's an issue or they have a need, I may not have the answer, but I know somebody who does. And then the second thing I'd say to your first question about just where PE is, the good news is in sports PE, between George and Michelle's firm and us, like
That's a good
we're actually doing all
point.
right,
Yeah, that's a good
right?
point.
We got both of us have work to do, but we're getting there. Overall, I think if you're starting a firm, I don't care what business, whether it's PE or law firm, whatever, this day and age, if you're not thinking about diversity, then you're going to lose. And so it's just good business. And then for me, and I think George said the same way, like if I'm building a firm, first of all, it will naturally be diverse just because of what my network is. But if I didn't, shame on me, right? So I'm very proud of the fact I think 81% of my employees are diverse.
Absolutely. So I want to transition now. That's awesome. Thank you both for that. So I want to transition and talk about strategy. So where are you seeing opportunities? What are you focused on?
Well, broadly, it's teams and leagues around the world. So Don mentioned globally. So we've, there's a lot of markets that we like outside the U.S., and we like the U.S. as well. So that's one broad element. I think I mentioned it before as part of another question. Women's sports we're incredibly excited about. Yeah. I always say time. When you talk about brand building, one of the ingredients is time. And men's sports have been around 80, 90 years. Women's sports, 20 or 30 in the large zeitgeist. So we just think we're really close to a tipping point. So broadly speaking, teams, leagues on a global basis, not just U.S. And then as a subset, we're big fans of women's sports.
Sure, Don.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on the women's sports. And I think technology's a big part of that, and that now you can get women's sports in time slots that matter, right? For years and years and years, you think about March Madness, the women's playoff and championship was in weird time slots. All of a sudden, you put them in prime time, they get ratings. I think NIL helps as well with creating stars, which will lead to more focus on the WNBA as well. And I think the NWSL is a rocket ship that is taking off as we speak. Look, we as a firm focus on places and situations where we have deep relationships. That's important to us, as I talked about with Liverpool. And we'll continue to go into that. I think there's great opportunity throughout all leagues and all geographies, but for us as a firm, we're focused on places where we have some confidence that the people that we're getting into business with are people that we want to be in business with 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
Sure. Within the sports space, outside of media, probably no other sector has had more disruption recently than the collegiate space. How are you thinking about that area as a potential investment opportunity?
It's on our radar. As I mentioned, look, we have a belief that the best operators make the best investors because they're, number one, able to assess value when you're coming in. Most importantly, they're able to create value as part of the team because they've done it and they know how to do it. And then third, as an investor, you also have an understanding when it might be time to say, hey, let the next skill set come in. As an operator, through that lens, we think there is a huge opportunity in collegiate sports to build global brands. So we're real excited. Obviously, it's new territory. We talk about emerging asset classes. It's new territory, but it's something that's it's definitely on our radar and something we spend a lot of time thinking about.
We talk about it. Years ago, I sold IMG College, which was part of IMG, to WME. So I've spent a lot of time around the space. If I was though transparent about, like, if I look at our pipeline, there's not a huge number of college opportunities, but we do think about it.
Sure. So we're in the middle of MLB postseason. Don, you alluded to this earlier, but what inning are we in right now from a private equity and sports standpoint?
I'd say second inning. There was, the early days of, Ontario Teachers, a big institution owning the Maple Leafs and the Raptors. You had Tower Brook with the St. Louis Blues, all the stuff that Dave Checketts was doing for a long period of time. Platinum Equity partnered with Tom Gores with the Pistons. That was sort of the beginning. That was almost like batting practice. And then you started to see the mega funds start to float around sports, the Silver Lakes of the world coming in. And then once in 2018, 2019, once the league started to change the rules, you've now seen firms like ours pop up, and it's still very much early days. We haven't seen, I mean, there's so many things in the private equity world that you see every day in industrial, healthcare, secondaries, transactions, even exits. We haven't seen that yet, right? And I think we will start to see that soon, and this is going to evolve. And I think the other thing to keep in mind, unlike many industries, you do have the leagues who are continuing to tweak the rules, right? They are watching what we're doing, and they're going to move based on how we act. And so I think it's important for all of us to be responsible if this is something we want to continue to have as an opportunity.
Sure.
Yeah, look, I mean, definitely to Don's point, from private equity investing in sports, it's early innings. As an investor, what I really care about is where are you in the value creation life cycle, early, mid, or late stage. And to me, it's really, and to us as a firm, it's really important that we're in the early stages of value creation. So you hear a lot of noise about bubbles, and I think it's said by people, frankly, where the thinking is relatively superficial. When you think about, and Michelle and I and some of the team who was with us lived this. We saw the first 1.5 billion people join the internet over the last 10 years. It's how we built a huge business in India and the Middle East. It's why we had 40 billion video views on YouTube. It's why we had 1 billion social media followers at WWE. It wasn't by luck. Right? It was by applying a really systematic blueprint, not just creating content, it's the data behind it, the data around building that brand. There's another 2.5 billion people coming over the next 5 to 7 years that are going to be consuming content globally across multiple platforms. That's one. Second element, which we haven't talked about, is sports betting. Now, people, when they think sports betting, think about the handle naturally, because that's first-order economics. Okay, yeah, people will be betting. So how does a team or league make money? Oh, there's an integrity fee. Great. Frankly, not all that interesting to us. What is interesting is how that drives engagement around the world, right? There will be if sports is if you have sports, scripted entertainment and unscripted entertainment are the three primary forms of content. Sports, we think, is the best of the three in terms of longevity and driving economic value. As sports betting broadens around the world, especially in the US, what that will do to casual engagement, not the hardcore fan engagement, the casual engagement to sports, I think is going to be a force multiplier in the value of sports relative to all other content that, frankly, is misunderstood and undervalued. So for that reason, for us, we don't really care when private equity started investing. For us, what we talked about, do we want to do this, is how much more value is there to be created here? And I agree on the second inning part. We're in the second inning of value creation.
From a governance standpoint, where are we going from here? So a number of the leagues have already allowed private equity. NFL is likely coming. My firm, Inner Circle, sold the NWSL expansion team to Sixth Street, a control position. Where are we going with the U.S. leagues? Are we going to get to a point where they allow PE funds to have control positions?
The major leagues, I don't think so. And I can say this, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the leagues, but as I have been an observer, having 30 or 32 individuals in a room who are long-term partners has worked pretty well. And I can tell you, we're not looking to disrupt that. I don't want to have a room that instead of 30 long-term holders, you have 15 long-term holders and 15 private equity firms that are looking for exits. That's not a good outcome.
Yeah, agree. Yeah.
So you can't have a sports conference and not talk about sovereign wealth right now. So the NBA has already allowed sovereign wealth to come in. I think Colin earlier this morning talked about a lot of these endowments and pension funds are already indirectly invested through PE funds. But how does the increase or sovereign wealth coming on board and investing directly in these teams impact private equity?
It's fantastic. I think, look, as I said, we want more capital in the system. And, as we think about where this world is going, in order for values to continue to go up because of the value creation that George talked about, you need capital.
Yeah.
And at some point, what you don't want to have happen is you run out of capital before you run out of value. And the sovereigns and the pensions and the endowments provide that. Now, I believe long-term, having folks like George and myself and Artos and others sitting in front of that capital is the best way to do it, because this is a very intimate and fragile ecosystem, right? Rooms like this matter. And so having folks that people in this room trust is really important. I think there will be a place for directs. I think that will happen, but I also think there's also a lot of places where indirect is the better outcome.
Sure.
Yeah. Look, I agree with it from the technical standpoint. Don's absolutely right. And look, on a personal level, I always think anytime you have people from different places, different experiences working together to do something, it's a good thing just generally, for humanity. So, yeah, I think it's on both fronts, it's a good thing.
How are you thinking about, from a time horizon, your investments? So you look at Dial, got into the Suns, got a pretty quick and large exit from that. Valuations are pretty high right now. How are you thinking about how long your hold's going to be in some of these investments?
I'll put it back at you. When you say valuations are high, what do you mean?
Oh, hey, I asked the questions.
You're the banker, man. I'm going to put you on the spot. No, look, I'm just being facetious. I don't think they're high. I think they're just, and George sort of alluded to it. If you've been around a long time, I remember when a $300 million NFL team was a big thing. I remember when I sold the Buffalo Bills for $1.4 billion, people thought it was crazy. Yeah. Then just 2 years ago, the Denver Broncos go for 4.6, and then all of a sudden Washington 6. So numbers move up, and if I always ask people, what was the largest market cap company in the world 10 years ago? The answer is Mobil Exxon at $440 billion, right? Things just move up, and it's hard for people in this room because you get anchored to old numbers to put it in context of what these large numbers mean. I don't think either George, and I can speak for George, I think confidently here, would be doing this if we didn't think there was an opportunity for more value creation. So obviously I think the values are going up.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, to say that whether valuations are high or low, like you really got to think through how much do you think the market's going to grow, and who do you think will kind of, take what share of that market? So if you think the media and entertainment sector is going to grow, if the revenue from consumers and brands advertising to consumers is going to grow, and if you think sports does disproportionately well in a growing environment, then I think saying that they're high, I think is the logic falls apart. So I would tend to agree.
And just one last thing, man, and maybe you're going to get to this. We've lived in the last 20 years where the content lived on dumb pipes. It's moving to really smart pipes, right? In Google and Apple and Amazon. That is a good thing for value creation, right? The leagues and teams understanding who their customers are, who their fans are, and being able to monetize them over time will bode well for value. And that's some of the stuff that George was talking about around value creation. Sports betting is a part of that. And so as I sit here and just think about where this world is going, this is fantastic, right? All of a sudden we have innovation and technology coming into sports. We haven't had that for 20 years. Now it's happening.
Sure. Now, are both of you going to take minority positions only, or are you also looking to take control?
It'll depend. I think in most of the investments we make will be a minority position, but I think there could be some situations, depending on the league and the geography, where we would consider a control.
Yeah, same here. If we can make money, we'll do it.
Perfect. All right.
I should have just said that.
I want to make sure we have some time to talk about SPACs. Some people talked about it earlier. You had one of the most successful SPACs with Bolero.
Yep.
We're coming up to Halloween. Are SPACs dead, or are they going to rise from the dead? Where are they going?
Yeah, it's interesting. Michelle knows how I feel about the, reporting in general. I was like, does anybody actually understand what they're talking about, or are they just reading stuff on the teleprompter? I remember somebody told me, SPACs did poorly, the 2021 vintage. I said, if you actually looked at it, SPACs did as poorly as traditional IPOs. So the issue wasn't how you went public. There was just a lot of companies that went public that shouldn't have, right? So that, again, kind of a misunderstood issue. So if you ask me about SPACs themselves, yeah, I think they're a great vehicle for a particular type of company with the right sponsor team, right? So I think, I'll quote Michelle, as we were looking at different businesses and there was a lot we liked, we had a lot of inbounds, and she goes, we're not doing a flying taxi company, and that was it, right? We were going to do things, even though that was, great valuations, right? The multiples are great, and we don't really care about that, right? We look at and dig in deep, and because we're operators, and we say, where are the economics going to come from? Where are they now? And can we help take them to another level? And so when we told the people who were pitching flying taxis, no, we're going to do bowling, they kind of looked at us and said, well, bowling's boring. Yeah, not so much, it turns out. So as you mentioned, it's, I don't know, the fourth or fifth most successful IPO, whatever the number is, of 2021, SPAC or otherwise. It's up while the rest of the market is down. And I would say the same thing, we're applying that same lens to how we're thinking about private investments. Do we understand it so that we can value it? And can we help kind of create value once we're there? So they'll come back.
SPACs win.
Well, I don't know that they win. I think they're just one of choices that people will have to go public. What matters the most, ultimately, is this a business should be public in the first place. As people who have run a public company, we have a pretty good idea of what businesses should and shouldn't be public.
Sure. Don, any thoughts on SPACs?
Sure. I mean, markets are efficient, and people like George and some others did really well with it. Everybody followed. Too many people created SPACs. They did bad deals. They lost money, and now they've gone away. But they'll come back in some form, right? And this has happened. We've seen this over the last 20 years. There will be a SPAC period, and then they kind of go away. They come back in a morphed form, and this will happen.
Sure. All right, we got the countdown clock. We got like 30 seconds left. So 5 years from now, when we're sitting here, what are we talking about?
How well we've done.
I think we'll continue. Actually, let me just end
Good
on
answer.
that. Cheers to that.
That was great. Cheers to that.
That's fantastic.
I'm not coming back otherwise.
Good job. Anything, Don, or that was the takeaway? Okay, good job. I like it. All right. Well, thank you both. This is wonderful.
Awesome.
Really appreciate it.
That's great.
Thanks,
Thanks
guys.
everybody.